Oh, hello, Caroline, and hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, No Visible Bruises. So, as always, like we have our very special person, the expert on this, Caroline Haribel, who is a brain spotting practitioner, somatic trauma informant, and a positive psychology coach. So, we would be honored to invite Caroline Haribel. Caroline, what are you going to teach us today?
Oh, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Sanjeev. And hello, everybody. Yes. So today we're going to be speaking a little bit about cognitive dissonance and how it feels in your mind. Everybody can experience cognitive dissonance. My understanding of it is ultimately the way that our brains rewire themselves. But conversely, when we are removing something, it hurts a little bit. So in order to be able to give yourself the opportunity to create new beliefs and new identities, we have to allow ourselves that mental pain just a little bit. Um, Ultimately, it has its benefits, cognitive dissonance, to be able to, belief bust effectively. So if you have like worthless wounds or not good enough wounds or unlovable wounds, we would use a little bit of titrated cognitive dissonance to be able to pinpoint areas in your life where the opposite has been true for you, to be able to give yourself that evidence to prove to yourself that you are worthy, you are lovable, you are good enough, right? um and so that's like how we would use it in a positive psychology kind of scope, to be able to use cognitive dissonance, the brain. And but again, it's that kind of like understanding how working with those beliefs and those behaviors, and then changing them and moving them forward. So but conversely, I actually experienced a huge cognitive dissonance breaks within my mind due to experiences that I had when I was manipulated into reactive abuse.
Mm.
I was forced to step over a line that I thought I would never go past. And so that was one of those cognitive dissonance breaks where my behavior didn't align with the identity that I thought I had of myself. And so, yeah, as you say, that break in that, like, and physiologically remembering back to how that felt to have that shock and distrust in my own self, in my own body, like, who am I? What have I just done? That
Mm.
sort of thing. Like, ultimately, again, going back to our nervous system, it will protect your body, yourself, as much as it possibly can in those moments. And just understanding how the nervous system works with that, to be able to, reconcile that disparity between who you thought you are and what you've done. That's ultimately that friction in our minds and our emotional core. It's like it's that ick feeling. It's like I don't know. This is how it shakes. It's like it feels like that. So like when you don't understand sort of why your brain suddenly feels like it's kind of in two different hemispheres, right? And you're trying to get a thought to go from one side to the other side, and it feels like you're trying to sew your brain back with treacle, and like it's very slippery and hard, and it's while it's kind of recalibrating this new information essentially. And if it's very large amount of information that's very different to what you thought about yourself, it's that massive break. Whereas if you can use it in a more titrated sort of way, sort of, as you say, sort of seeing those smaller steps to prove to yourself that you are worthy and you are lovable, then it's not quite so painful. But yeah, so like essentially for me, like, because it, again, as I said, it was that incident, and then I had the assault incident, and then also I experienced massive cognitive dissonance in the nature of the way that I lost my job, where I didn't feel safe in the environment, and I had evidence that I believed from my understanding, that also backed up the fact that I wasn't safe or supported with sufficient paperwork and like protection mechanisms. Um, and so then again, I went into another cognitive dissonance kind of disparity about my belief around that safety element. And it puts you into a shutdown as well, because when your brain is looking to rewire this new information, it takes some time to be able to do that. It's essentially our software is crashed, and we all have our computers, and it's like,
Sure,
no, you
sure.
got the spinning wheel. It's like, no, nothing's working. I'm just going to stop. It's because the brain is just going, I don't know where this new information fits, and it's not safe to move forward until we have another bit of information to say that it's okay to continue, or assimilate that new information to figure out what the new behavior is going to be able to encompass that moving forward. So yeah, so cognitive dissonance is it's basically the way that our brains function with regards to our beliefs, our behavior, and our information. And if they all correlate together nicely, then you don't have that mental and emotional friction. But conversely, as you say, if you've got something that, for instance, also like when an abusive relationship, you start off thinking that you're going to go ahead and have this identity together moving forward, and this person is presented in a way that they're nice and kind and caring, and then suddenly one day you have an argument and it results in a actual physical harm, and that breaks that belief you have around that person and your safety with that person. And quite often, initially, as you say, we look to sort of rationalize and justify and account for that, or maybe they've had a hard day at work, or maybe they have had a difficult childhood and that was what they saw from their parents, and looking to justify it. But ultimately it is an assault on your person, and then we're, so that's that kind of like, I expected you to be this way and behave this way, but then you've shown me that there's an opposite to it, and trying to reconcile that. And we get that cognitive dissonance, that kind of, how do I put that new information in? And it hurts initially, because our brain is now again working overtime to kind of again assess our safety level with that person, assess the danger threat level of that person again. And that's where your hypervigilance behaviors then start coming in around watching for that person's behavior more so as well, to see whether or not there's that trigger again, to see whether or not you're going to come into that. So yeah, so it's a beautiful opportunity here with you today to explore what cognitive dissonance is, and how it can also benefit you as well. Excuse me.
Sure, sure. No,
You got any questions on that?
no, 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 no. It's a very wonderful learning experience.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, as you say, after I'd sort of experienced it sort of 3 times in quick succession, I mean, ultimately that's what trauma is, when we've experienced too much too quick too soon, like, and you don't get the opportunity to kind of assimilate that thing before the next thing happens again and again, like complex post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. Like, too much too quick too soon, like, my body just doesn't know how to move forward with this, and it's trying to assimilate and process everything. But where I experienced it, essentially it felt like a part of my brain had completely regressed into being a child. Like, quite often my emotions as well felt very, very raw and very brand new, essentially like I was sort of like a 18-month-year-old baby again. And that was also like sometimes I had that cognition of an 18-month-old baby. And I know that the reflections from some of the people that I had in my safe circle would notice that I'd be speaking in a conversation and saying something, and then sort of suddenly drop off halfway and go off into a space, like as though the thought had just disappeared, like, because essentially the pathway of that thought had got to a rupture point from that breakdown of my information pathway, the way that my mind had used to take to collect to that information and that memory, and it just sort of severed it because it got to a blank point, that kind of trauma amnesia element of, oh, I can't go there, it's too painful to think that thought, or so, but yeah, so it was really curious sort of to have a part of me that felt like the 43-year-old woman that I am, and then another part of me that was really kind of very childlike and didn't understand and felt very confused, and like people call about like brain fog and stuff like that. And yeah, definitely after you've
Brain
had
fog.
a cognitive dissonance where your mind is recalibrating, as you say, that is that kind of like confusion in your mind, that and there's those emotions that are coming up that are very raw and very young, and when you can understand and find that compassion for that younger part of your brain that's regrowing essentially after those severings, you know, it's really beautiful actually to sort of witness and experience, you know. And that's quite often as well. I know that we speak about like people that have experienced extreme traumatic events, and then they seem to have like this epiphany of a newness, because ultimately, as you say, our brain can always regrow everything, and this is a beautiful opportunity, if you have unfortunately experienced it, to kind of go, well, now I get to recultivate the identity that I want to have, the new beliefs that I want to start to grow, because that other one has been proven to be wrong, and that's okay, you know. And but we need to be able to conceptualize with our future casting, um, what we want to develop into, as you say, ultimately, hopefully, something with a compassionate awareness for yourself, and more connected into yourself, you know. But yeah, as you say, it's quite often a very beautiful experience to see someone flourish after a traumatic incident, like or an accident or something. It's very life changing, you know. That old belief of how I used to be able to want to operate is now chosen a different path. And yeah, it's great when you get that opportunity. Feeling positive.
Yeah, yeah. It's very nice.
Yeah. So I mean, as you say, like so going back into like that, the way that like we can sometimes create beliefs around relationships or around who we thought we wanted to be, or justifying some of our past behavior as well. You know, we can, like, when you're in a justifying kind of mode, as you say, ultimately we're looking for that information point of how can I reconcile that behavior with what I wanted to have happen. um and as a person that is potentially receptive of the abuse or the incident, you know, quite often we can, as I said, like try to justify that behavior by going back to that, and then we can rewire in a different belief of, you know, trying to create an imaginary reality around what's actually happened, you know, and kind of blanket out with that trauma amnesia, you know. So quite often, even though horrific things have happened, we don't our minds don't look to remember them. We look to remember only the good things and the positive things, and justify that behavior because we get the good things and the positive things. But ultimately, you know, a good experience shouldn't come after a bad experience. That's not really a very nice or healthy place to be living in, you know. And but ultimately, you know, when you're creating that false narrative for yourself to sort of justify the behavior of someone else that's abusing you, you can get into a toxic positivity, and you can shut down into a lot of other kind of senses of discomfort, where, as you say, because you're feeling discomfort in the relationship, you're blocking out those negative things in order to try to feel happier and safer in the environment, you know. So it's like, even, I mean, we all know of like how amazing our body is at rejecting information that we don't want to have to assimilate. Like, for instance, you know, the concept of nose blindness. You know, if there's a bit of a smell that's not very great, like for instance, if you've got a wet dog, like if you have a dog and then they gets on the furniture, and like, but then as the person that lives in that environment, you don't notice the wet dog smell on the furniture. But then if you have a guest and they're like, oh, this smells, but like our nose can block out negative, you know, smells, and as can our mind block out other, you know, negative events that have happened. But ultimately, as you say, it's a really curious things, the way that we
Yeah.
look to create our environment to make it more healthy for us, even though potentially that it's not healthy. I mean, like, ultimately, again, with nose blindness, sometimes some smells can have toxic, like, properties to them,
Yeah, sure.
and you know, it's necessary to make sure that we have clean environments. um But yeah, but it's just really fun to be able to kind of explore those senses and the way that it just does it in our subconscious. It's like, and it's not until someone else potentially brings it up to you and you go, oh, maybe that isn't so great. Maybe I better address that. Yeah. And so when we're looking to you know when we're looking to kind of utilize cognitive dissonance with regards to belief busting around, that about trying to get ourselves out of that false narrative of that positive toxic kind of amnesia block of us, it's about doing it in small little titrated ways. We appreciate that our memories always actually can remember everything. Like even going back to that bad smell, when you bring your awareness to the bad smell, you can smell it again, right?
Sure.
But and so with the belief busting around, identifying negative behaviors that have happened towards you, um, that so we want to start looking at identifying maybe like a timeline, like just writing down in a journal like the actual honest truth of, I felt uncomfortable there was a rudeness towards me there, where your boundaries essentially were violated, and it tipped you into that sort of more sympathetic kind of feeling of feeling unsafe, like going into that flight potentially. um and that's where that's eroding your self-confidence and your self-worth as well, because if you're not if you're putting yourself in a place where you're not feeling safe. And that's another where you sometimes you have to do it, ultimately, as you say, with life puts us into difficult situations, and sometimes we have to, but ultimately that's another kind of like self-trust break as well, where our our physical selves are kind of like pulling away from ourselves, and we're creating that inattention as well, and discomfort of, I keep being in this place that isn't safe for me, um, and I don't feel comfortable, and so that's where we also start to get like a functioning freeze and disconnecting from ourselves as well. So like there was also quite a lot of time where, through that disconnect from myself, essentially I felt like I was watching myself living my life, but I felt like I was in a tunnel and didn't really experience it, feeling in that trauma, that the way that my body had shut me down and my minds and emotions had shut down, and I couldn't connect to myself. you know so it's just it was, yeah, it's a really uncomfortable place to feel trapped within yourself. you know and so yeah, so it's just, but it was ultimately my nervous system, I appreciate, was trying to get me through that period of time from from the information that I knew and how I had experienced my life moving forward. It felt like it was paramount for me to keep getting out, going to my job and earning my money, and but as you say, ultimately it became apparent to me that I wasn't safe in that environment for where my mind was healing. It was too much.
Too much.
And so yeah, and so I had that cognitive dissonance break in that as well. And I think another curious thing that we need to kind of explore as well is the way that what I say isn't necessarily the same thing as what you'll hear. you know Again, when our brains are in different sort of locked belief patterns and behaviors, they'll hear what they want. It hears what it wants to hear in order to compound that belief, so as to strengthen that belief process. So sometimes, even when you do show evidence to the contrary of something, your subconscious will reject it. It's like it doesn't fit with everywhere where I go, so I'm going to reject that information that you're trying to give me. um, because again, we don't, as people, we don't like to feel uncomfortable, because if that new information gives us that cognitive dissonance of other things, it's about knowing that you're now going to have to potentially slow down to be able to give your brain sufficient power and energy to be able to recalibrate all of that information. And sometimes our brains are like, no, I can't, I haven't got the energy consumption to be able to assimilate that, so I'll just reject it. Like, just completely stonewall that out, like it just didn't happen. So yeah, so it's that's where you get kind of like stuck into that trauma bond as well. It's like because your brain can't assimilate the evidence of it being toxic or bad for you. So it just rejects that, and it's and breathe. And so let's just take ourselves a moment to do a little bit of a breathing exercise, because one of the greatest things to be able to bring yourself back into your body is what's called a physiological sigh. So where essentially you fill up your lungs all the way as full as you can, and then once they feel like they're full up all the way, then you take in another sniff to increase it just a little bit, and then make a very long out breath. So you'd sort of breathe in for the count of 5, and then sniff, and then extend for the count of 8. Okay, so should we just do that?
Sure.
Right, so breathe 5.
Okay.
And sniff, and then out. Yeah, amazing. And that's it. That's it. As you say, all bringing that, just that one breath is all you need, because just being able to concentrate on that, and it down regulates the nervous system. I don't know if you can tell already straight away. Prior to doing that, I was a little bit, in my sympathetic, because ultimately, as you say, I'm bringing up my own experiences.
Sure.
And now I've just been able to downregulate my nervous system, because actually I am in a safe environment, even though cognitively I was going back to environments that didn't feel safe, and that was okay. Just being able to do that breath, and just bringing in that extra little sniff, and then the elongated out breath just really helps. So excuse me 1 second. Yeah.
So
Go for it.
So Caroline, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goes in, and then
Yeah.
like the sniff makes it
Yeah.
like just 1, right?
Yeah. So all expanding your breath all the way in as much as possible, and then that extra little sniff just expands it a little bit more, to just get that little bit more oxygen in, and also to inflate parts potentially of your lungs that don't normally get filled as well, to really utilize all of your lungs. And then the elongated out breath is really beautiful, because it helps to downregulate your nervous system, because ultimately, if you were being chased or in a fight, you wouldn't be able to elongate your out breath. Like physiologically, it would be just like, no, we have to do like quick in and outs to get the blood pumping, to be able to have our muscles ready. So when we have that opportunity to bring the longer out breath, it helps our nervous system to realize that we are actually in a safer environment right now. Even though, as you say, you were looking at, you saw it there with me. I was looking at events that from my past that still, hold some pain and angst, and it's okay that our physiological memory, the muscle memory of that event, holds the trigger to be able to get us into flight and flight, because that was what we needed in that moment, so, and that's okay.
What about the 8 count? The 8th one? It's like the out breath is 8?
Yeah, so because we want to make sure that the out breath is longer than the in breath by a few counts.
So 5 and 6, and then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 8 you exhale.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Increasing that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I was also watching a program with Jefferson Fisher the other day with regards to that you can, once you get good at mastering that physiological sigh, sort of slower, like, and practice it as well. And our bodies need to be able to practice that breath as well. And then when you're actually in conversations, you can do it, but a lot quicker. So you could just do like a regular in breath, and then and just like, without really it being very obvious to people that you're down regulating. When someone gives you that information that is coming, and it's like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about that, everything's going to go alarm bells to that. It doesn't correlate with our belief systems and our behaviors and our other information previously from our life as well. So when information like that comes in, you can give yourself the opportunity to bring that in, that physiological sigh as well, to kind of go down regulate the immediate response to it, so that you can actually bring your prefrontal cortex, your logic part, back online, because you're not actually being attacked in the moment. It's a piece of information that might not correlate with what you believe or think. But conversely, when we give ourselves the opportunity to be in that true self state, we want to be able to be curious about the information rather than defensive, because if we're defensive, then we're not in our true self state. We're blended with that protector part of us that, feels like it's violating some other belief of us. And so we're looking to protect that wound of feeling worthless or not good enough or unlovable or stupid or whatever that core wound belief is, and that, so yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
so yeah, so going into how a belief busting exercise can help you, with regards to finding that those core beliefs that you hold of yourself that actually aren't true and they're holding you back, so just giving yourself the opportunity to just sit here for a moment and just relax and just thinking with yourself, just gently, just feeling into your heart again, and just thinking to yourself, what is a core belief that I have of myself that maybe isn't true of me right now? Just noticing that, and noticing if you feel it anywhere else in your body, that core belief, and just gently being aware of it. There's no right or wrong in these sensations. They are what they are. Just gently being curious. And then seeing that core belief. And then inviting yourself to notice other parts of your time where the opposite has been true, where you have been good enough, where you have been lovable, where you have been kind. Giving yourself that opportunity to remember all of those times where the opposite of that core belief have been true for you. And just gently feeling into where you feel those sensations in your body. Yeah. Just bringing that gentle awareness into that. And then bringing yourself back up and into the room and giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling and notice what you're noticing. Yeah. As you say, I mean, we just want to be able to just gently titrate into feeling those core wounds, that painful belief that we have around ourselves, and then just gently giving ourselves the invitation to see places where the opposite has been true, because ultimately everything yeah, and because sometimes as well, because our brain is so very good at trying to prove to us what we believe. It's a really interesting concept, because ultimately our brain as well, it can only process between 60 and 80 bits of information per second. So what we're looking for, it shows us. Okay, so I'd just like to do just another game with people, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is a really curious little game that we can do, just to get curious about how amazing our brain is at showing us what we're looking for. Again, if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, don't participate in this at the moment. So I just want you to just gently look around the room and just count 10 different things that you can see that are the color brown. Yeah, and you can count them on your head, like tracking around for all of the different things that you can see that are the color brown, and give them a number. I'm looking to remember those. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And just check around them again, like seeing them all around the room and just checking into those things. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And then just closing your eyes again, and just again giving yourself that visual memory of seeing all of those brown things. Mm. And keeping your eyes closed, I want you to tell me all of the things that are the color red. in your room, keeping your eyes closed.
Color red.
Yep, everything that you could see that was the colour red. Can you see anything in your mind's eye from when you were looking around?
Yeah, umbrella.
And just opening your eyes up and now looking for things that are the colour red.
Uh-huh.
You're like, oh, there's that and there's that. There's this
Many red now.
Yeah. And that's the great thing. It's like that's just there being able to show to you how amazing your lens focus, that magnifier, when you're looking for a specific thing, you can see that everywhere. Like everywhere was brown, even maybe some things that maybe weren't quite brown, maybe they were a bit beige, but like, no, that was brown as well.
Yeah. Sure,
You
sure.
know, like looking to justify and to say, yeah, this is right. Like our brain is like gonna make us right always, yeah.
Mm.
But then it's so curious, as you say, when we've closed ourselves and fixated ourselves on looking only in that lens, how
Mm.
many of the other things we didn't see? We didn't notice all of those other things that were red, right?
Mhm.
And again, that's that when someone has got such a tight focus of no, everything is that color brown,
Mhm.
and then you say this really is red. They can't
Mm.
accept that. You
Oh.
know, it's like, no, this is my belief pattern that I can't, like, to be able to accept that new information. It's like, oh no, like it creates
Mhm.
that friction in your head. Like, and I noticed, as you say, one of the beautiful things that I noticed when you looked round, you laughed, you chuckled with it. You're like, oh yeah, because ultimately, you know, we're playing the game of gentle curiosity, and so we feel comfortable to be able to release and express that discomfort, because ultimately as well, that little chuckle, that's a bit of a laugh. I think we mentioned about like the chuckle before as well, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, it's just nice to be able to kind of give yourself that opportunity to disperse that sympathetic kind of like, oh, I feel a bit wrong there, and I was, oh, okay, something came up, it's
Mhm.
okay, you know, and so just, and again, when we're going back into that other belief busting of looking for places where our evidence of who we are is different to that core wound, you know, it's
Mhm.
okay to let whatever wants to come up with that as well, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so have you got any other questions with regards to this?
Caroline, what you mentioned, is it like a self, how to say, like a defense system in our brain? As you mentioned, uh, it does it. Yeah, that's one question. Like, is it like a self defense mechanism? Like, even the numbness, like you mentioned, like the smell, no, like those example I understand. So likewise, like the even in a negative situation, the brain kind of goes like numb or to that, like the example you showed, even
Yeah.
anything that happens negative. So is it some kind of like coping mechanism, or like mostly like even like a defense mechanism we have?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. It is that defense mechanism. I mean, this is always the ultimate conundrum, isn't it? It's like, as much as I know that this environment isn't healthy, my nervous system also knows
Mhm.
that I lived through that experience. It was okay, like I survived. Right?
Mhm.
Conversely, the opposite of that, knowing that abuse,
Mhm.
is what else is there? That's everything, isn't it? Like that, and that can hold a lot of fear, which is also one of the elements that keeps people in abusive relationships as well. It's like, I don't know what the possibility of getting out of this relationship might be. Like,
Mhm.
and again, as you say, like societally, it might have other connections of, breaking down relationships, and then,
Mhm.
it could potentially, your social standing and everything could diminish as well. And so, it's about your nervous system's always weighing that balance of what is the quality of life that we're going to be looking to have as well. What are the things that we're looking to, justify and allow, because the fear of the unknown
Mhm.
is massively scary, and our nervous system doesn't like unknowns. It prefers to just be a creature of habit, and I know where that is. I know where that is. I know when this trigger happens, then that's going to react on me, and I appreciate that, but I've handled it before. But ultimately, again, it does escalate and it does erode you ultimately, and there are other opportunities out there. As much as the fear is there, while you're in this, you can start looking to future cast and create that new identity of who that person is potentially going to be, and finding all of the resources that new pathway is going to need, separating from that, again, as you say. And it's about having that duality in your mind to be able to create those. Again, you're going to give yourself cognitive dissonance to create that new belief of who you're going to be, to be able to work forward with that. And that's okay, if you're doing it in those small titrated elements and shielding your emotional well-being in this, because once you can identify those behavioral patterns of abuse, once you've got that understanding of how it triggers you, then you have the control of being able to not let it take your emotion and take your energy and your supply, and be controlled with it. You can then regain that self-trust and self-control in that, and give yourself that little barrier to be able to go, all right, I've conserved just that little bit extra energy today to be able to focus on my escape plan, or the other strategies of moving forward, moving away, potentially. Yeah.
So
But again,
is this the reason, like some people, like for example, who are doing very harsh jobs, for example, say somebody's working in an oil rig maybe, or like in the deep, like very rough seas or something. These are like very hazardous environments, right? But yet they like put themselves to work there, like continuously, when they know the dangers, sometimes the fumes, maybe the gases. Just example I'm telling. So is this the way, like they become a kind of like numb state, or like this the brain starts reacting like that? Then is that the reason they can go the next day and work there, or even for like years on? Maybe it's a mine. They go deep and it's very risky, and sometimes it's not comfortable. The situation is not good. The risks are there. With all that, some people. So, can it be like helpful also at times? Because sometimes their brain would not take, like if somebody would really start feeling, they might become afraid. No, oh, I don't want to go there tomorrow. Oh, I want to avoid that situation. It's a possibility, right?
yeah, so, as you say, ultimately a person that's choosing to go down that career pathway, I'm assuming that the employer is going to give them a lot of health and safety training prior to embarking on that. So they're removing that fear element by giving them the information beforehand, and again the training and the skill set. So when you know that you're going into a risky situation, there's not really that kind of cognitive dissonance, because you understand all of the parameters around that choice. But again, ultimately, it can happen in that even though those are the potential risks, if it actually then happens to you, it brings it into the real existence of experience. And that's when it's like you can get that break of, I didn't realize it was going to be that bad and now I can't go, because your nervous system's going to go, no, that's really, you knew it was unsafe, but now, there's a difference between that cognitive theoretical concept of unsafe and the physical tangible, it was unsafe, I really nearly died, I'm not going there again. And also as well, we can, when we're in that environment as well, when something like that has happened, that's where it triggers other, going back to that little exercise. Once you've felt that danger, and you're seeing life through that lens, you'll see it everywhere. Yeah. So it's not just that singular environment of the work, it's now potentially everywhere else as well that's coming in and showing you that everything's just the color brown and I've got to shut down and I can't, because everything is dangerous, while your brain is processing that new sensation and that new feeling. and that new experience of how it felt to feel completely different in that environment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say, and it just massively feels so uncomfortable in your mind. Like, I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I had training, like I knew what the risks were, I knew the safety procedure and everything, but the actual event, it still was more than the capacity of everything that potentially is set up. And and then yeah, you get that, or ultimately you discover that something that you thought was in place that you had just assumed potentially, an assumption has become a belief. And then when that ruptures, that element of safety there, that can give you cognitive dissonance as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
like the disbelief of, I can't believe you didn't have that covered. Um, yeah. And that also then can break your trust with other people as well. It's like, how are you okay with that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but again, until they've experienced the thing that you experienced, they're naive to it and they don't
Mm-hmm.
identify the same risk element, you know. So, and that can create quite a difficult relationship with people, when they because ultimately, again, it's one of those things. It's like, until you've been there, you don't really know. Like,
Mm-hmm. True.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, yeah, but and again, it's going back to that cognitive dissonance element. It's like, even though people might be able to tell you how horrible it is, again, if you have that belief of, well, it has to be okay for me, and they're giving you information that is contrary to what you believe, you'll reject it anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. Again, it's that self-preservation of what needs to get done. So yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
yeah. So, so yeah, so we've done physiological psi, and we've had a little bit of
Mm.
experiment, and yeah, it's really really nice
It
to
was
get a little
very
bit
nice. Yeah,
experiential today, and to kind of do some stuff together. So that was
sure,
awesome.
sure.
You
Yeah, yeah.
got any other questions?
One more maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, could this act like a survival instinct? Okay, I'll just give an example, no, because it's happening in the world today. So
Yeah.
some people are put into situations like even without prior training. So we do programs in different areas of the world, and no, they share their experience. For example, like I met some people who, and I don't want to mention where, but they were promised a different job, but they were put into a war zone
Mm,
without prior training or anything. But they are still surviving. So, think like suddenly if you are thrown into a situation like that, but still you try to adapt and even at least survive, no?
mm,
There's a so how does this relate, Caroline? Just like as you think, because like you mentioned, like if somebody gets a prior training, yeah, sometimes, or even think like some there are survivors, no? I know you are a
mm,
great survivor, no? And there are some people who were put into situation, but they held on, uh, sometimes in shackles for like years in modern times, right? But
mm,
somehow that they stood, no, maybe it was all dirty and everything, no? And so, uh, is there a way without us even knowing, like there's a mechanism that makes like a survival instinct we have? For example, like a plane crash happens, no? Then there are some victims who just like hold on, and sometimes there are incidents or stories like how they survived, and it seems like, oh my goodness, like how it was for them. Most it was very difficult to make up their minds to do some things, but it was in the reason of like surviving. Uh,
mm,
So, can this our defense mechanism like change for like a survival mode also? Even in if you take it more in a lighter means like more not a gruesome scenario like that. Yet it's difficult. I'm not telling anything is easy or like you mentioned. No, you have to really be in that situation to see how tense it is. So if you bring it back to a household situation, some people just stick to maybe just like there's one person we know, so this lady cannot complain to the police, thinking that the husband will be even more aggressive and even come and kill her. So
mm,
because like they would just warn him, no, like don't do this because he had not. done like a crime, or if he's locked up for some time, it's not for a very long time.
Mm.
Then he'll come back. So she's just worried, like, so she's just hanging on, no, like, or staying there because there are children and a lot of reasons. Uh, so can this become like a in those very gruesome incidents or each one's related situations? Can it turn into like a how to say survival mode?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately,
Mhm,
as you say, when we are in environments that there really isn't a place to be able to get out of in this moment,
mhm,
we, with the cognitive dissonance, we essentially create like a pseudo reality,
mhm,
like that imaginary fantasy reality of
mhm,
it's not that bad, like, and I'll block out the horrors, in order to be able to, function with the rest of our everyday life. Yeah. So,
mhm,
and so it is ultimately, as you say, a different kind of defense survival mechanism that our brains put into it to be able to protect us from
mhm,
what we know to be true and what we need to have to happen to be able to keep surviving, you know, because appreciating that, there are wrongs out there, but not every wrong can be righted right now,
mhm, mhm,
because ultimately, if righting that wrong costs something else that's more great, it's about finding that balance, and then finding within yourself that those informations to be able to kind of correlate it sufficiently so as to create your behavior, um, to be able to believe that you can survive for the next day. Yeah,
mhm,
and ultimately, yeah, as you say, that's hopefully the belief of everybody, is that we can survive this and survive for the next day and the next day and the next day.
mhm.
So that then hopefully moving forward in the future, then we might have the opportunity to, amend it should we choose to. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, and ultimately, as you say, it is a heartbreaking things to witness
yeah.
and to feel in with those people that are taken from their life choices, and then
Mhm,
made to do things that potentially,
mhm,
they wouldn't choose to do if they weren't
mhm,
in that environment, you know. Um, but ultimately, it's about giving ourselves the compassion to say you did what you had to do in order to survive in that moment, and that's okay. You know,
mhm.
looking at who's right and who's wrong is irrelevant. It's about survival. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and recently I met a person. Uh, this person is a very kind person, and
Mm,
but my goodness, like problem after problem in a massive way, from natural disaster to man-made disasters
yeah.
arrives on a daily basis to this person. But it seems like it's not touching this person, not in a harsh way, but now I think it had happened so many times. This lady, like, she's like kind of like immune. And if
Mm,
somebody was, this was happening, for example, like maybe a cyclone came and their entire property and everything was destroyed, then they get some like relief or some aid like that from a government. And
mm,
then suddenly they say, like, okay, you have up to only this time, we'll remove that, huh? Like a mobile home or something, huh?
yeah.
So everything like seems like they come and taunt this person and just has to like work like 14-hour shifts, all these things. But it's remarkable to see this person keeps the calm and the work place. And these are things like people would go crazy, maybe, like thinking like, you, okay, here's the cyclone, and then you get like a temporary home, and they're trying to take it away from you also.
Mm,
Now one after the other, one after the other. But this person, like, I think it had happened so many times, many, many things. Uh, and now but it's not like a brute force also. But it
mm,
seems like she had got this like armor around, and she's like, but inside very kind, uh,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
gentle also. But it's fascinating, right? How people can evolve with all through the hardships, no, in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You should say, like, there's the concept of like trauma, even though they are traumatic incidences that are happening to her. She's not internalizing the trauma,
Mm,
um, and and she can still has the capacity to be able to handle and cope with that moving forward. Again, like if two people were in a car crash, maybe one person just gets out with the physical injuries and then heals and recovers, and another person comes out with the physical injuries but also psychological injuries and has flashbacks, and because their capacity to be able to heal in that moment wasn't as large as the other person. So ultimately we are all different, but quite often the person that experiences more trauma in those environments has got other deeper kind of belief core wounds around themselves where they aren't enough and they're worthy of all the disasters and it's the woe me and everything. But conversely, this other person sees the incident for being the incident, and as it's not a reflection of them, it's not some kind of punishment for some other past life, crimes or whatever. It's just, this is life, and about that belief of whether or not it's triggering. I deserve to be, put into these kind of negative information places because I'm not good enough or I'm unworthy. And it's the way that we interpret those different things. So it sounds like this person appreciates that these are a succession of horrific and horrible events. But conversely, when you're in that emotionally mature, intellectually mature state of higher self, then you can stay in prefrontal cortex and deal with actually the issue at hand rather than emotionally blending with a behavioral part that just doesn't really know how to correlate with that information. And gets into cognitive dissonance and then creates other things to be able to function. Because life is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see just for what it is. As much as it does have its tragedies, it also, like, even though she had the tragedy of that, then she had the opportunity to have people come support her in providing with the mobile home. Like, we appreciate that it's not a permanent solution, but it was a solution for right now. It's like when you see the balance of the highs and the lows in life, it's a really beautiful way to be able to see that we connect so well together, and we are all very interconnected, and we all depend very much on each other in those environments. But congratulations to that lady for being able to handle it. Right. Conversely, again, her nervous system, hopefully it's in that ventral vagal, she's seeing it, she's feeling the feels and everything. But conversely, she may also be massively in dorsal vagal, like just a complete, like, dissociating shutdown of just functioning to get things done. And even though it seems like she's handling it, it's more like it's like an ice cube and everything's just not getting in. Like, and so but ultimately her nervous system is working in the best possible way it can in order to help her survive in this moment, and that's okay, that's good enough, that's perfect, that environment. And you just say but it's about her own internal knowing. Nobody could know really from looking at her per se, for how she feels internally around it. And that's why, as well, like with suicidal ideation, quite often it's that silent monologue that we have. We're projecting to everyone else that we're happy and functioning and achieving, but then internally we have that kind of that disbelief with ourselves of, I am not okay, I'm pretending here, and I don't know how to get out of this fakeness that I've created, this pseudo reality that I've created. And so quite often that can be a place where we look for that call to help because we do not feel aligned with ourselves at all. So again, it's about people giving themselves the opportunity to either ask and speak out and find sufficient help with that, and ultimately as well, other people coming in and going, are you okay, is everything, like, let's just check in with how you are really doing, because quite often when we suppress the tears and the rage and the fear, we're not giving that capacity to actually heal. So
Okay. So thank you so much, Caroline. Well, and we'll definitely put your details in the video as well as the post we put, so anybody can reach you. So she's a brain spotting practitioner, trauma informant, positive psychology coach, and much, much more. And she's a very caring mother, a great survivor, and a beautiful human being. So anybody can like reach her and ask her and learn from. And we also, I also now categorize these as like trauma, like so like in a playlist like thing. So anybody can go through that, refer, and it's all credit to her. So anybody can reach her and get her expertise. So thank you again so much, Caroline, and I hope we can have more things like discuss, or like you can teach us actually, so to be honest, more of these things. And yeah, may you have a wonderful day, and everybody who's watching. Yeah, this is all for like educational purposes and to better your life. And like she said, maybe she can say it better than me. If you're going through some kind of these things or some triggers happens, please reach out of your into your local help services, or like people who can help you. So yeah, any last advice or anything would you like to share, Caroline?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you again. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and thank you, Sanjeev, for giving me this opportunity to have these discussions. It's really beautiful to be able to educate people, to be able to reduce that fear element, because cognitive dissonance is a very, very uncomfortable place to be living in your mind. Um, and when we can give people the opportunity to kind of understand that there's that mental healing going on, so that we can then, as caregivers around that person, give them that little bit of extra emotional compassion, to be able to give them that environment to be able to heal quicker, rather than pushing demands and onto them, uh, for needs. Yeah, because that person needs to be able to heal their mind in that. So yeah, and yeah, just allowing yourself as well to go back through some of the exercises that we did today. Keep coming back to this post, because that it is just nice to be able to connect in with yourself for a few moments every now and again, because we are our own best friends. At the end of the day, we're always looking out for ourselves, and that's okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, then thank you so much again.